Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new prorevenge stories.
The first story is called, You Don't Deserve This Role, You Haven't Earned It. I was offered a job role in mid-2019 in middle management at an aged care service. The general manager that hired me worked with me previously and we both had similar vision and expectations. He helped me get a really good job with his reference and he ended up moving to another organization as a general manager, which was well deserved. A year later, he called me up and he had a role for me and wanted me to come across to his agency. The team I ended up managing had a senior employee we will call Karen. She was a woman in her 40s, with an actual Karen haircut. She had large rectangle spectacles with the reddest lipstick and smelled like a department store fragrance section. She claimed to know everything and had been in the organization for 9 years. She was expecting to be given the role due to her seniority and was highly agitated once she found out that the general manager had brought in an ex-colleague to fill the role. Karen was toxic and didn't take well to not automatically getting the management role. And she didn't like that I set clear expectations around the work which didn't exist prior. Her attitude towards me was nothing but disgusting and provided me with nothing but resentment from the moment I walked through the door. One of the first conversations I had with Karen that never left me was that she told me, "You don't deserve this role, you haven't earned it." That sat with me for a while and played with my self-confidence, as this was my first management position where I was managing a large team. Our team was mainly young and easily influenced. Karen had been whispering rubbish into their ears and manipulating them into thinking I was out to replace them by implementing unrealistic key performance goals. Actually, the goals I set were super easy. She was also best friends with the state manager Sharon, which gave her a lot of protection. But luckily, our team didn't fall under the state manager's department reporting line. Sharon was known as being ruthless in her department and everyone was too scared to oppose her. My revenge came through circumstance and a little through my own planning. I was enjoying the role but have to admit that Karen made my job really difficult. Having an internal ball breaker in my team hurt morale but also productivity. Karen didn't see the need for one-on-one catch-ups because apparently she knew more than me and it was a waste of her time. Everything I discussed was met with an excuse, rebuttal, or denial. I documented everything and I knew she wouldn't read it and she blindly signed it afterward without reading it because it came back to my desk within seconds of me handing it to her. At the time, we were introducing working from home as we were running out of space in the office. All she kept saying is that she wanted to work from home because of time, public transport, and the fact that she probably wanted to do nothing and have no accountability. She would be the last person I would want working from home, as she is always blaming the computer for being slow, the internet, her keyboard, any excuse imaginable. I provided feedback in our one-on-one catch-ups along the lines of smoke breaks are to be taken during your morning break, lunch, and afternoon break, not every hour for 15 minutes, leaving early without notice, and about her phone metrics around picking up the phone. We weren't a call center, but let's just say she had a 5% pickup rate and she would be getting around 40 calls a day. Answering phones was beneath her and the team was starting to get really annoyed because she was always smoking, never answering the phones, and always being negative. My team, God bless them, started to see her for who she was. Historically, the company had previously given everyone exceeds expectations on their annual performance review to keep a happy culture, which would ultimately lead to a remuneration increase and employees having a false expectation of rewarding subpar performance. Because she had a 5% pickup rate on the phones, took more breaks than anyone else, did less work than anyone else, had a 50% attendance rate for team meetings, and also didn't listen, I gave her an unsatisfactory as an overall score, which was the lowest. Karen missed out on her increase and was warned that she would be put on performance management if she didn't start showing improvement. I don't think Karen had ever been spoken to like that at work and actually given hard-hitting feedback. Karen was angry. She took me to human resources, claiming I was bullying, saying I gave her the unsatisfactory out of spite. I over-enthusiastically provided the 15-odd one-on-one documents that we had both signed discussing her poor habits around breaks, punctuality, and performance metrics. Karen was told politely that this was not bullying but me managing and setting expectations for performance. This wasn't the last time she took me to human resources, but I would say I had about 5 different discussions from human resources regarding bullying of her. They were all her word versus mine, but that time I had proof and could refute her bullying claims. She read every one-on-one document from that moment. A few days later, I was in the toilet washing my hands, but I could hear people out in the foyer waiting for the elevator. It was Karen and Sharon, the state manager. Karen was mocking and tearing me to shreds and Sharon wasn't happy with the general manager at the time either. Apparently, I did all the general manager's dirty work, which I reflect on now, and laugh, as all I was doing was setting expectations to which we were to work under. My team was providing me feedback that they are getting sick of her bad-mouthing me, which I really appreciated as they had matured a lot and we were starting to build a strong culture aside from the ball breakers. The general manager called me into the office and advised me that my team would be working from home to free up desks as we were not essential to be in the office. This was before 2020. The only catch is that one team member had to remain in the office in case someone walked in off the streets and needed information or other unlikely scenarios where someone administrative had to be there. And with that, I started my revenge. Like clockwork, Karen would always take cigarette breaks at around 10 and would be gone anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes and would always be late or miss meetings if they were scheduled in that time, as it was her time to have a break with Sharon. From our one-on-one catch-ups, the only thing she ever contributed positively to her development or future goals was the fact that she wanted to work from home. I came up with the perfect plan relying on her behaviors for this to work. I scheduled a meeting at 10 via email and requested all my team that it be compulsory to attend due to important changes and included everyone important from our department in this email and invite. The day comes, the meeting has started and you guessed, she was out having a smoke. I asked everyone, who would like to work from home? And everyone put up their hand. I advised that there needs to be one person who does remain working from the office and asked if anyone wanted to volunteer. No one volunteered. I smiled with joy as I had given her a forewarning that this was an important meeting. The general manager and another manager of a brother department were also in attendance, giving Karen no hope of arguing. She came in 15 minutes late with a coffee in her hand, just as we were wrapping up. She was wondering why everyone's so happy. One of the team said that we get to work from home. She smiled and was like, great, when do we start working from home? I looked up and grinned. Because you didn't attend the meeting, all the available working from home spots were allocated. You'll be required to still come into the office. She was livid and even threw her pen that was tucked behind her ear at the ground. Why didn't you come and get me? You knew I wanted to work from home. I told her, in front of the team and the managers, that it was compulsory to attend this meeting, which was clearly stated, and I'm not responsible for the time management of your day as you're an adult. Her friend Sharon also received some bad news. Her position was made redundant and she was demoted to another department and office, which meant Karen's biggest ally was no longer around to support her. The team transitioned into working from home and I still came into the office. Why did I come to work? Because I wanted to keep Karen accountable by sitting next to her every day. The team took to working from home very well and productivity went through the roof. I still remember sitting next to her and saying good morning in a nice loud voice. As expected, I saw her on a job website looking for jobs and blatantly not caring if I saw it. I got a phone call from my previous employer who I was still on good speaking terms. Megan asked if I worked with Karen. I said I did and Megan told me Karen had applied for a role at their center and asked me to speak about Karen's character and wondered why I wasn't listed as a reference. We actually caught up for a drink and I told Megan the whole story of how Karen was lazy, a manipulator, and just not a nice person. Karen was applying for a management position and I advised heavily against hiring Karen. Megan called Karen right there and then and asked about her references and her current supervisor. She said that her manager was Sharon, the former state manager. And she said that she was a great mentor, but she was outgrowing the role and the opportunity to grow was limited. Megan told her that she is not going to offer her an interview, let alone the role, as she was not transparent about her work history and falsified references. I can just imagine how confused Karen must have been. The next morning, I sat down and told Karen, Megan told me to say hello. Karen just stared at her keyboard wide-eyed and not saying a word. Karen ended up finding another job, they never called me for a reference check. I started working from home the very next day and still am to this day. The most satisfying part of this saga is that her new job was made redundant and she reapplied for her old job back. We were not actually hiring, but I made an exception and made Karen interview via Zoom with one of the young staff. She used to talk bad about me and clued on early that Karen was vile. We started the interview. She couldn't have been more sweet, nice, and two-faced. Her face was still as antagonizing as ever. I could smell her perfume through the computer. It was still as offensive as it was in person. The interview was over in 5 minutes. I waited an hour and called Karen and told her, you don't deserve this role, you haven't earned it. The next story is called, He Got What Was Coming. I worked an engineering and construction job last year for a home builder and we had to deal with a bunch of jerks moving into one of our neighborhoods. There were constant complaints about the construction, the noise, the debris, which made no sense because they chose to move into the neighborhood before construction was completed. One man, in particular, would harass us daily, complaining about the streetlights being too bright and complaining about a generator we had running about a block away from him to power the site temporarily until we had the infrastructure in. The complaints ranged from the generator was damaging his hearing or that the fumes from the generator were coming into his house. They would come up with stuff that made little to no sense. It escalated to the point where he got the city and the mayor involved, and we got sued. So we gave in to his requests and moved the generator to an inconvenient location and had to take the time and money to rewire to be able to power the areas needed. This was including important stuff like the streetlights. We had to leave off for a couple of nights until the move was complete, and you guessed it, he would call to complain. The nerve of this man. So, here comes the revenge. We received an order from the city to install a mobile network tower on site to improve cellular connection because the area we were in had pretty bad service. Since my team and I were in charge of creating the plans to install the infrastructure, guess where we all simultaneously agreed to put the tower? Right smack dab in front of the angry man's house. We thought this was incredibly hilarious and couldn't stop laughing every time he would call, freaking out while the tower was being constructed. It got to the point where he tried to file another lawsuit, got laughed away, and within a week, we never heard from them again. He moved out faster than the wind. The last story is called All Because of Tips. So, this all happened years ago when I was still in college. I worked for a delivery joint. The company seemed super cool because they provided vehicles instead of forcing you to beat down your own car. Huge perk, right? Well, in this case, no. The owner of the company used this as justification to take a percentage of the driver's tips. Often, this would result in an employee making below minimum wage. If you made below minimum wage, you would have to come and pick up your check in person and sign a document attesting that you did make minimum wage due to undocumented cash tips. Now, this was a problem for two reasons. Number one, in the state I was in, employee tips belonged to the employee unless part of an employee tip pooling agreement. This was plain as day on the Department of Labor website. So that 20% gouge was already crossing a line. Number two, you cannot just hand wave and/or force employees to say they made above minimum wage. Pretty shady, right? Now, most people would see this situation and run for the hills, which probably explained the delivery driver turnover being so high. I, on the other hand, saw the potential. I am pretty well versed in labor law and decided that I was gonna ride it out. I wanted to see how long they would keep this up. Here and there, I would make comments to the managers about the legality of their practices. I was told, our lawyers said it's okay, so it's okay. I would love to meet these lawyers one day. So, I patiently waited for a year, documenting every red cent they took from me and encouraging the other drivers to do so as well. Every new driver that came through that door got a little talk from me and I would explain what's happening. Unfortunately, my plan must have leaked because sooner than later, the joint decided to fire me after making up 3 bogus infractions. This wasn't a problem though, as my plan was already in action. In this state, unpaid wages collect interest. So, what was $20 a night, 5 nights a week, over 1 year quickly became a decent sum. I began collecting the names of current and previous employees that had been screwed over by the company and collected their documented data. I then sent it off to the Department of Labor. At the end of the day, it took a couple of months, but the company was eventually required to pay a decent chunk of change to all parties and a pretty hefty fine on top. Overall, I believe it came out to a little under $100,000. I wasn't done though. Those shady little documents they had us sign claiming we made over minimum wage affected how the company was reporting its payroll tax. The IRS eventually came in and hid them for a ton of back taxes. Finally, I was increasingly aware of the company's under-the-table agreement with their health inspector. I decided to go ahead and tip off the health department. This resulted in even more fines and a temporary closure for the joint. Altogether, it ended up costing this dumb little delivery joint a ton of money just to stay open, all because they wanted 20% of their drivers' tips.
Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.